Hey More Than Fates fam, welcome and welcome back to my channel. My name is Sierra. I'm a licensed barber out of Oklahoma City and I drop content to help barbers grow in our careers. So in today's video, I'll be talking about Barber College versus an apprenticeship. So let's get into it. So firstly, we're going to talk about Barber College. We'll get into the pros first. So number one, Barber colleges really work to help you pass your exam. So you'll have worksheets, tests, homework, and so on. And I know that sounds a bit annoying, but this is super duper key when it comes to exam time, because you have to pass 2 different barber exams in order to go ahead and get your license. Barber College is really putting the effort, the work, and the time to help get you as prepared as possible to pass these exams. If you're considering going to Barber College, you want to go to one that has enough structure to actually be able to teach you these things well, because this is so key when it comes to actual exam day. You do not want to go in there and feel not prepared to actually take your exams. Another pro of barber colleges, our second pro on this list, is that they are usually a lot less hours than an apprenticeship. So each state has its own required amount of hours. So it can be 900 hours, 1,500 hours, 1,800 hours. And this exists for both barber colleges and apprenticeships. These hours essentially show them that you have been practicing and working to the point where you probably know how to cut, or you probably know how to pass your exam. And so after completing these hours, only then can you go ahead and sign up for your exams, get your temporary permit, and then finally get your license. Now, barber colleges usually have a lesser required amount of hours than apprenticeships do. In the state of Oklahoma, an apprenticeship is 3,000 hours, while a barber college only requires you to complete 1,500 hours. So it's literally slashed in half. So if you want to get into a shop setting quickly with a license, then maybe a barber college will be better for you, because you'll have to do, at least in the state of Oklahoma, a significantly larger amount of time if you're going to go the apprenticeship route. Now, piggybacking off of the hours, barber colleges really keep track of your hours for you. So, like I said, you have about anywhere from 900 to 1,800 hours, depending on the state you're in. And barber colleges really make sure to keep the exact amount for you, so you don't have to try to calculate them yourselves or anything. So usually they have like thumbprints, or they'll have like sign-in sheets that keep track of pretty much every second that you're in the building. This is helpful. It's annoying, but it is helpful because it allows you to have the exact amount of hours you've been within the building. You don't want to be in a school or go to an apprenticeship and they fumble on your hours. Now you're there longer than you need to be. You've been working for or at school for 5 days or so and they have lost all of those hours. Something like that is an absolute nightmare. Barber colleges don't tend to do that. Obviously, there's variables. You want to go to a school that really does keep track. I'm saying in a general sense, barber colleges usually really keep track of this, but naturally there are some schools that slack. So if you do decide you want to go the barber college route, them keeping hours is definitely a pro, and you want to go to a school that definitely does this. Another pro of barber college is that there's usually a lot of them. So depending on the city you're in, there could be some 5+ schools in your area. This is a pro because if you don't like one kind of school, you can go to another one. This is not the exact same way for an apprenticeship, and I'll break that down later, but the fact that you have options is really cool. Now lastly, my most underrated pro is that you have a community. So whenever you're in barber college, irrespective of your race, your gender, your age, you're all kind of shoved into this place trying to learn something from the ground up. And this was so cool because it put us all on the exact same playing level. I went to school with some people who were like 45 or 46 and were veterans, and I went to school with some people who were 18 or 19. I went to school with some people who had really big families. I went to school with people who travel the world. In barber college, you meet a whole bunch of different people, but what brings you all together is that you all are trying to learn this exact same thing. So it made a community, it made a family of us that because I had that, I was able to get other jobs. I was able to build other kinds of connections within the barber world within my city. And it was just so helpful. I don't want you to underplay the importance of community, especially when it comes to barbering. The lighting's slightly changing because I'm right in front of a window and my eyes are hurting. So bear with me. Let's get into the cons of barber college now. Firstly, you have to pay to go to Barber College. Depending on the state you're in or area you're in, it can be anywhere from like $11,000 to $50,000. The Barber colleges in Oklahoma started about $20,000, at least within the city, which you have to pay for unless you just have $20,000 laying around. So this is definitely not ideal if you're trying to, just kind of start life, start a family, start whatever. So definitely keep that in the back of your head as you look at Barber colleges. Second con of Barber college is that you do not get paid to do haircuts. There may be a couple schools that are outliers that maybe do this, but from what I've experienced, and you guys can tell me down below if that's not what you experienced, but from what I've experienced was that we didn't get paid for our cuts at all. If a client came in and decided they wanted to tip, they would tip, but you're not getting, 15, 20, 25 bucks while being in Barber college. On top of the fact that you have to pay to go there, you don't get paid for the work you're doing. Now, that shouldn't discourage you. It didn't discourage me. I probably shouldn't have got paid for a couple of those cuts. I chili bowled the heck out of some people, so it's a learning place, so don't be too offended by that. Another con is that instructors may not be open-minded. What I mean by this is that there are some instructors who've been cutting for a long time in a shop, or they're cosmetologists who got their instructor's license and decided they want to work at a barber college, and so their experiences can be really specific. And so they'll teach you one way how to cut, one way to talk to your clients, one way to do pretty much everything. And barbering is not a one-size-fits-all kind of an industry. So if you're watching Chris Bazio and the way he cuts, and then your instructor says this is the only way to cut, and they're different, it can be frustrating and it can kind of halt your growth. So keep that in mind as well. Once again, don't let that discourage you, because there are some really awesome things that instructors can teach you, but they may not be super with the times. They may not be super current, I'll say that. These next two cons are probably my deepest felt cons ever. Firstly, barber colleges do not prepare you, in my opinion, at all for actually being a barber. So the setting you're in is really academic, and they don't necessarily teach you anything about being in a shop, paying booth rent, growing your clientele. Those are not things that you're really going to be discussing. That, I think, was not helpful to me at all in the very beginning of my career. The very first day I even went to a shop, I was completely confused on what I was supposed to be doing. And this experience was not only mine. A lot of people who went to barber colleges felt this way, and it took months before they finally got their footing to be like, okay, I finally feel like I know what I'm doing. The point of barber colleges is not to prepare you for the shop life. It is to prepare you to pass your exams and to complete your hours. So they focus on those two goals. Because those two things are their goals, there's a very fair chance that if you go to barber college, you may not actually know how to cut hair when you leave. This was not my experience, but especially for ladies, this has been a massive problem, to where you go to barber college, you pass your exams, whatever, you're licensed, but you have no idea how to do a fade. It takes people an hour to 2 hours after they're already in the shop, licensed and a pro, all because the barber college didn't teach them how to actually cut hair. So if you want to know how to cut hair, you got to do solo study. You got to watch YouTube videos. You got to ask barbers. You got to sit in a shop and see how they're actually working. Otherwise, like I said, you won't know, because that's not the point of a barber college. So if you do learn how to cut, that is just the cherry on top, but that is not ultimately the purpose of barber colleges. Lastly, the reason why you probably or maybe won't know how to cut at the end of barber college is because there's not really a whole bunch of cuts coming in. So depending on the barber college you go to, they can be extremely dry, especially post-pandemic, or now that we're in the new world. You don't really have walk-ins in the same kind of way. So there were times where, you didn't get a cut at all. And my school happened to be very popular within the city, so we got a constant flow, a pretty steady flow. I started barber college in February 2020. The whole world shut down in March of 2020. So I was in school maybe like 4 weeks before everything came to a screeching halt. After that, the traffic flow completely changed. Walk-ins completely changed. People calling into the school to get cuts completely changed. And there was a lot of days where you're just kind of sitting and waiting around for people to come in, and they didn't. And my school was kind of popping. So if you go to a really dry school, then there's a very fair chance that you could wait days, if not weeks, in between haircuts, and you can get a very slow amount of reps. And the name of the game for cutting, learning how to cut, is reps. The more you cut, the better you'll be over time. You really want to consider this as you go to a barber college. Now, I know the pros definitely were less than the cons in the case of barber college. Overall, I'm glad I went to barber college. I think it suited me for what I was trying to do. But if you're still on the fence about barber colleges, now we're going to talk about apprenticeships. The number one pro for an apprenticeship is that you learn how to cut mad fast, okay? So, because you're in an actual shop setting, you're forced to become quicker with your cuts. The pace is just so different. The energy is different. So it forces you to get up and go get the cuts that are coming in. It forces you to learn quickly because you're getting paid by the people who are sitting in your chair. Piggybacking off of that, you get paid when you are an apprentice. Depending on the relationship or how you set it up with the person you're studying under in the shop you're at, you'll actually be physically getting paid for every single haircut that you do. So once again, if you're getting paid for something, you're gonna learn it quickly. So number one and number two go hand in hand here in a way that doesn't necessarily happen for you if you are in barber college. Next, you don't have to find a shop to work at after you graduate. This can be a really big hurdle for a lot of people. You can shop hop, you can try out a place and not really be where you want to be. You could be there for 6 months and be like, that sucks. But if you are an apprentice, you're already working in a shop. You already are getting to know the people you're working with. You're getting a comfort level with the culture of that shop, which can be very helpful because trying to find a shop can be distracting from just learning the basics of being a barber out in the world. I know that it held me back from progressing as quickly as I wanted to. I looked at about 16 shops. Now I'm picky. I'm very picky, so this may not be your experience. But I looked at about 16 shops before I decided to go to the shop I was at. And if I was already working at a shop as an apprentice, this wouldn't have been a hurdle that I would have had to jump over. Now, going hand in hand with that is that you don't have to build clientele if you're already an apprentice. During the X amount of hours that you have to be an apprentice, you're going to be building clientele that entire time. So if you're working for 2 years, you're building up that clientele for 2 years worth of time, which is awesome because barbers don't get paid unless we're getting cuts, and building clientele to get those cuts can take a fair amount of time. I would say somewhere between 9 to 12 months before you would feel completely stable, like you have consistent bookings. But if you're an apprentice, you don't have to worry about that because you would have been working under somebody long enough to have already built clientele. Another pro is that you get real-time industry experiences. So you get to see all the things that you will not see if you are in barber college. You'll get to see how to interact with your clients. You'll understand consultations better. You'll understand what to do if a client is unruly, or negotiate booth rent, stuff like that you cannot learn if you're in school. You definitely will learn as an apprentice because you're already in the industry. You're forced right into the fire. Our last pro is that you get to learn from multiple barbers who are actually cutting actively. So unlike at a barber college where you have instructors who aren't necessarily in the field anymore, you're working chair by chair or alongside, how y'all say that, y'all? You're working right by barbers who are cutting every single day. So learning their tips, their tricks, their methods, whenever you have downtime or whenever you're just around them, really does influence you, and it influences the way you cut. Now, let's get on to the cons of an apprenticeship, because at this point, obviously an apprentice seems like the better of the two options, but there are some significant cons. Firstly being that you don't really have any exam prep if you are an apprentice. How apprenticeships are usually set up is that you kind of are like a low-level barber. You come in, you're technically working under someone else's license, and they're supposed to keep track of the hours and everything for you. And you come in, you work, you bounce. So there's not really, from the apprenticeships that I've seen, there's not really a lot of studying or curriculum or academics at all whenever you are an apprentice. So all of that would have to be done solo, which if you are someone who can solo study, this isn't a big deal. But if you are not, it can pose a problem. Now, I do have a membership site where we drop content each month to help barbers. And currently we have some exam prep on there. We have flashcards. We have multiple videos on how to prepare for your exam. We have an exam itself, a mock one, so that you guys can get as prepared as possible for your exam. So if you're at that point where you're on the fence and being prepared to take your exam is the tiebreaker for you, we do offer a resource for you guys if you want to go ahead and check that out. I'll leave it down in the description below linked. I think even if you are in Barber College, it could help you get that extra oomph to go ahead and pass your exams. But you will not necessarily get that backing if you are an apprentice. And there are 2 different exams you have to take, both a practical and a written. Secondly, you have to find someone who is a licensed barber instructor. I bit my tongue, y'all. You have to find someone who is a licensed barber instructor in order to be an apprentice under them. So just like with any other trade, you have to find somebody who is established that you can work under. If you were a plumber, if you were an electrician, this would all be the exact same. So for barbers, your state board will require that the person you're working under most likely, now you have to check with each state, but they're most likely require that person is a licensed instructor, and they have to vet that the place that you'll be working under is safe for you to actually study there. This is the only reason why I didn't become an apprentice. I couldn't really find any instructors to work under. Most instructors are in schools. They're not really barber instructors who are working in a shop. So at least in my region, it was like this. Now, if you're maybe in a larger city, the situation could be different, but it wasn't for me. On top of the fact that you have to find an instructor, you have to find an instructor who has their stuff together, because you have to keep tally of all the hours. You don't want to work under somebody, and because you're almost like in this weird quasi state of being a real barber, you come in, you work, you bounce. You don't want them to not be keeping track of your hours and forgetting that you're actually an apprentice under them. So they have to keep track of how many hours you're working. If you come into the shop and you do a 12-hour day, you don't want them to miscount and only count 8, because now you have to make up those 4 on the back end, which is not cool at all. So on top of that, if your instructor is not only unorganized when it comes to the hours, but actually helping you, you don't want to be in a shop setting to where you don't know anything and you're drowning out there. You want to be studying under somebody who's going to come over and help you, that's going to break down the steps, that maybe is going to get there a little earlier to teach you the fading system that he thinks or they think will be best for you. You don't want someone who's just kind of essentially having you be a faux barber and you come in, pay booth rent, and leave, because you are trying to study, you're trying to learn this. And that also can be challenging to find. You find a lot of people who have apprentices mostly because they want to get the booth rent from them instead of actually teaching them how to become a barber. I only have 3 cons for an apprenticeship, unlike the multiple I had for Barber College. But these 3 are really important, especially when it comes to the hours and when it comes to having exam prep, because it doesn't matter how fantastic or how quick you learn how to cut hair. If you aren't getting your hours counted, and if you can actually pass those exams, you're never gonna get your license. It's just not gonna happen. And you need to get that license, because you don't want to be dodging to the state board. You don't want to have to constantly be getting paid under the table. You want to open a bank account. You want to be able to get a car and have credit. That cannot happen if you are unlicensed. And you definitely want to consider this as you look at an apprenticeship, because although it seems like really great in the field training, if the person you're studying under is lacking in these 2 other areas, then it could be detrimental to you actually getting your license. So I hope this video was helpful to you guys. I know that this decision can be a big one, but I wanted to take a little bit of the stress and the edge off of it. Like I said, I became a barber via Barber College. If I had the option of an apprenticeship, I would have chosen that. I think they're both fantastic options just because barbering is really cool. So if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Talk to me down below if there's some things I left out, some pros or some cons about either path, or about some of your personal experiences. I'll be checking out all the comments there. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram at _morethanfades, and don't forget to follow us on TikTok as well. I have all those names linked down below, and of course I'll have the website with our resources down below as well. I can't wait to see you guys till the next video, and bye bye.